We're here to explore the anatomy of the soul. Rabbi Ari Kaplan presents a fascinating scenario. He says, let's say you have two people, Joe and Sam has a bad heart. So Joe says to his buddy Sam, he says, if I pass away and you still need a heart, I am bequeathing my heart to you. I'm leaving my heart to you. They can do a heart transplant. So sure enough, Joe passes away. Sam still needs a heart, and they do a transplant. They put Joe's heart into Sam. Who is he now? Is he still Sam? Or is he Joe? After all, in the Middle Ages, they said that the seat of the emotions was the heart. Maybe he now has part of Joe in him. Take another scenario. There is an argument to say that our brain is really a set of synapses, of electrical synapses, which goes through biological material. But the argument goes, those same synapses could be created in silicon, in a computer. So if you could map all of the connections in a person's brain, you could theoretically re-diagram that brain onto silicon and transfer the data. So let's say you get Joe's brain data. You wipe Sam's brain clean and you transfer Joe's data into Sam. Who is he now? He's Sam's body. The body keeps the score. But he's got Joe's brain, Joe's thoughts, Joe's memories. Does he still have Sam's feelings? Take it one step further. Israel is starting to reconnect spinal columns, the implications of which is you could theoretically someday do a head transplant. So now not only would the person have Joe's thoughts, but he has Joe's face. Is he still Sam? Is he Joe? Who am I? And that's really what we're trying to get at. We're trying to get at the question of who am I? When I think of myself, am I the body that I look at in the morning when I wake up? Am I, and I believe that Western society, by and large, identifies us with our feelings. The feelings, emotions have taken on a great importance. Not that they aren't important, but really in defining who a person is. It used to be you'd ask someone, what do you think about this issue? Now what do you ask? What do you feel? And so, are we our feelings? Are we, on the other hand, if you'd ask me, who are you? I'd probably lean towards saying, I am my personality, my character traits, my qualities, and how I live them and act on them. On the other hand, maybe I am my memories. Maybe I'm the sum accumulation of everything that's happened in my life that's brought me to be who I am today. On the other hand, if someone gets amnesia and loses all their memories, my sister was in a terrible brain trauma injury accident and lost most of her memory. She recognized me, but not her best friends. So is she still the same person, but she doesn't have the memories? Or you could ask, am I my thoughts, which are different than my emotions very clearly? So these are all something to explore because if a person has, as we said, like a brain injury or loses their ability to think, but is still conscious. So who are they? And so we come to all these different layers of a person. And the Torah does give us a guidebook to understanding what is really the essence of a human being. Let's go to Genesis and look at the creation of man, the creation story, to try and understand the essence of what the Torah views as the human being. God formed in Genesis 2:19. God formed the human, or Adam, from the dust of the earth. He blew into his nostrils the breath of life, nishmat chayim, and he became a living being, which is nefesh chaya. So the metaphor used Well, first of all, we see that human being has two dimensions. The physical one, that's the dust of the earth, that's our physical bodies. But then we're told we have another dimension blown in from God. And the metaphor of blowing, the word is nishima, which corresponds to the word used for the divine soul, nishama, that we have a soul within us. And the totality of that being, according to the Torah, is the nefesh chaya. The nefesh, best translated as being. So what is this nishmat chaim, this breath of life, this divine soul? How do we understand it? And here we have our AI-generated cool picture of the breath of life being blown into Adam. Now, there's another very puzzling verse in Genesis talking about the creation of man. There's several, some people say creation stories, or several imagery used to describe creation. Here it said, God created man in his image. In the image of God, he created him. Elohim et Adam b'tzalmo b'tzelem Elohim bara oto. So, who is his image? God created man in man's image. That makes sense. But he also created him in the image of God. What is the image of God? According to Nachmanides, that means that the soul within us, that consciousness that we have, is like the heavens, and it's describing when man's spirit is brought forth. So the image of God means our divine soul. And sure enough, the Talmud in Brachot 60b and the morning prayer that we say every morning in the Jewish prayer book tells us about the soul. My God, the soul you bestowed within me is pure. You created it, you formed it, you breathed it into me, and you preserve it within me. Now, this is very interesting. God created it, yet he still breathed it into man. It was still an active act of God, and we'll have to see what that means, how we understand that. What is the relationship between God and the human soul? If God created it, okay, so he created our physical being, created a cow, so the cow exists. Why did God have to breathe the soul into it? And you will eventually take it from me and restore it to me in the time to come. That's referring to the Jewish belief in resurrection, which is one of the Maimonides' 13 principles of Jewish belief. Discussion of that for another time. As long as the soul is within me, I give thanks to you, God, and God of my fathers, Lord of all creatures, master of all souls. So every morning we thank God that our souls have come back, that we've woken up. We were in a coma for 6, 7, 8 hours. And now the soul, in a sense, has been returned to us. The Zohar, the book of Kabbalah, tells us that the soul is journeying through higher realms, higher dimensions of reality when we are asleep. In a sense, the soul is more free, and so interesting implications for dreams and what we can channel through dreams. Blessed are you, God, who restores souls to dead bodies. So when we wake up, it's like we've died and now we are born again. Our soul has come back. Okay. So let's look more at that breathing in the soul. The Kabbalah uses the imagery of a glass blower. And before we get to that, we have to understand what the different stages are. Those different stages of the glass blower imagery for God blowing the soul into us correspond to the different levels of the soul. And the Zohar, the book of Kabbalah, tells us the soul has 3 levels it focuses on. Some Kabbalistic texts talk about the 5 levels of the soul. Now, the top 2 we don't really access, but let's stop at the bottom. The nefesh is the life force. Now, you think that, okay, so it's our will to live, it's our drive to exist, but we kind of think that we can feed the body, we sleep the body, and it just keeps running. But healthcare professionals will tell you that sometimes they see that a person just gave up. They know they're going to pass away. And it wasn't necessarily a physical decline, but their life force has ebbed out of them. And so if we don't have the nefesh, we don't have that drive, that will to live, that energy that is powering us to move ahead in life. Sometimes when we're depressed, we lose that partially, and we see how inert we can become. The ruach, the spirit, is the higher level, higher than the body. In a sense, it's the more abstract parts of us. You could say it's the seat of the emotions. And if you think about emotion is a very interesting thing because we have physical manifestations of the emotion. I get mad, I turn red, I'm in love, I have butterflies. But what is the emotion? The emotion is something very spiritual, it's very intangible. So we see already that there's something to the human being beyond the physical. Are emotions just a composite of biological reactions spinning our brain? I would think most of us would feel no. Other dimension of the ruach is the more abstract sensitivities, the aesthetic sense, which goes even beyond emotions, but it's the perception of the unity and diversity. It's a beauty, it's a balance that moves us and touches us. There's also our psyche, our personality, our character traits, which are all not part of the body, yet they're not yet the divine soul. So what is the divine soul? The neshama. The divine soul is, we just saw, pure. It's our inner essence. It's the part of us that strives for meaning and purpose. And that's our, one could call it our creative self, impacting the world in a purposeful way. And our neshama is also the sacred self. It's the part of us which wants to experience connection to others, connection to the divine, to find that closeness, that intimacy, and that self-transcendence. And when we search for meaning and purpose in our lives, that's our soul yearning to be nourished. When we try to be in the moment, when we yearn for closeness, that is our divine soul. The chaya and the yechida, the living essence, the unique essence, are, as I said, we don't really access them. You could call them the spiritual subconscious. The chaya is being life, it's presence, it's being in that moment. It's connecting to the divine through the reality of the godliness inherent in all. And the yechida is the actual connection to the divine, which we'll discuss that at further length. And the question is, do we actually ever really actualize that? So back to our analogy of the glass blower. Now, what is our relationship to the divine soul? And what is our God's relationship to that divine soul? So a glass blower has the air in its lungs, which it exhales. It blows through the tube, and then it comes into the glass, which is molten, and the air fills up the glass, creating the space inside. So in a sense, the air within the divine lungs, that is the neshama. That is the breath that the God is blowing into. The ruach, which literally means wind, is the pipe, in a sense, connecting to the body. And the nefesh, and the word nafash means to rest, actually, is, as we said, the life force which resides in the body. But what we see from here is that the breath in the lungs is not actually the glass blower. Even though the term is used, chelek elokim mimal, the Tanya uses that term, and sometimes Chabad teachings say mamash, literally. But according to most understandings, the soul was created by God. It's not actually God. We have godliness within us. And that's what we are striving for. So that is the struggle. That is the challenge, to identify the godliness within us, because it's that divine soul that connects us with the Almighty. That is the conduit to get to God. And the challenge is that we don't identify with the neshama. The neshama is even beyond personality. And it's hard to imagine myself stripped of my personality. Who would I be? What am I? I am that inherent goodness. I am that desire for connection. I am that search for meaning and purpose, beyond even our emotions and our body. But the challenge is that we get confused. And we have many personalities because the Ruach and the Nefesh are part of us. So sometimes we put so much of our investment into those parts of us that we tend to neglect the neshama or confuse our real self with that. The joke is told of the executive who has a big yacht and he goes out into the ocean and he knows that the weather report is not good. So he goes anyway, and the wind starts to blow, the ocean starts to get choppy, and he's in trouble. He calls for help. He calls the Coast Guard on his radio. He said, I'm in distress. I need help. Come rescue me. And they said, what's your position? Vice President of National Bank. Sometimes we define ourselves by all these different masks we wear: our professional self, our physical self. We look in the mirror. Oh, okay, checking in with me. And we got very obsessed about our physical self, very focused on it. Our society definitely, there's pressure to pay inordinate attention to our physical selves. And now what happens? We age. And the body I had is not the body that I had is not the body I now have. So who am I? Have I lost part of myself? We lose our job. We go through crisis, and rightfully so. We need livelihood. Our job is part of our creativity and our impact on the world. But is it who we are? Is it the definition of me, so that if I lose my job, I am lost? There's the poignant story of Viktor Frankl, a psychologist who actually developed a psychology called logotherapy, the psychology of meaning. And he lived in Germany. He was deported to the camps. And he took with him his most precious object, which was the manuscripts of his life work, of his research and his writing on psychology. And he goes through one step and another. He hides it under his clothes, and then he gets to the showers. Not yet the gas showers, but regular showers. And they tell him to strip down. And he pleads with the guard, let me keep my manuscript. And the guard says no, and cruelly throws it away. And he realized at that moment he was stripped down to the bare essence of who he was. His head was shaved, his clothes were gone, his life's work was gone. What remained of him? His true essence. What remained of him was his neshama. And so ultimately, the Torah tells us our true self-worth is in the soul. And to realize that, as Rabbi David Aaron says, we are a masterpiece. We are a piece of the master. And when we want to find identity and purpose and sense of self, we know we are someone. We are some of the one. There's godliness within us. And the problem is that we're told after the transgression of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, before that they lived as a soul. They identified as their soul, and they had no desire to do anything wrong. Their moral compass was totally directed, and their moral balance was maintained. And when they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they now internalized that desire for evil, and they were in a state of struggle. And so the neshama, the soul, in a sense, was broken away or was distanced and now hovers above us. And so that's why we say a person who's able to kind of bring their soul back within them, their face will shine. And the halo has been appropriated by Christian imagery, but it's found in Jewish sources as well. To symbolize the soul being internalized in the body. It says that Moses, after Mount Sinai, his face shone so brightly that he had to put a mask on it. His soul had returned within him. And so our job is to keep the connection to our soul and to try and identify with it and bring it back within us, make it a part of us. And how do we do that? How do we accomplish that soul journey? So 2 more points about the challenge of doing that. 3 more points. One is that the soul has yearnings, but too often we look for artificial substitutes for real soul pleasures. Rabbi David Aaron describes, you up at night, you go over to the fridge, you open the fridge, you look at everything there, and you close the fridge. You're looking for something, but you don't know what it is. And you open it again and close it again. He said, there's a hole in us, and we think maybe I'll fill that hole with food. Maybe I'll fill it with a relationship. Maybe I'll fill it with a job. But ultimately, it's only the ultimate meaning of meanings that can really fill that hole. The second imagery is the beginning of the journey of the Jewish people, Abraham and Sarah. The Genesis tells us God says to Abraham and Sarah, Lech lecha, go from your land, from your birthplace, from your father's house, to the land I will show you. So 2 strange things. First of all, why doesn't it say where Abraham was supposed to go? What land? You tell someone to go somewhere and you don't tell them where. Second of all, why does he have to leave? Because he's being told that there are parts of your life that are holding you back. You've built this life. You've inherited this culture, from your family. Maybe you've even inherited certain personality traits. But we're meant to evolve beyond that. We're meant to find out who's the real me. And sometimes we have to be able to let go of parts of the old me to find the real me. But why don't we do it? Because we're terrified. People don't change. People stay with the painful present, even if it's terribly painful, even if they don't like it. They stay in a relationship, even they know it's not healthy. Why? Because the bad I know is more comfortable than the future me that I don't know. It's too scary to journey into the unknown. And so we don't. So we stay stuck. But if we can follow that lech lecha, that call for the soul journey to constantly grow and evolve and find our true self and actualize our divine soul, then the Torah tells us, lech lecha, you will find lecha. It means literally go to you, the double expression, meaning you will find your true inner self. That's what the Torah is telling us. So let's look at the Torah's direction for the soul journey. First of all, the 5 levels are housed in different parts of the body, and they correspond to different parts of our experience. The life force, the nefesh, is actually in the liver, which is the seat of the blood. The Torah tells us the blood is the nefesh, is the life force. And that's why in kosher animals, we slaughter it in a way which will remove as much of the blood, and then we salt it to remove the blood, because we don't want that animalistic nature to come within us, or as little of it as possible. And that corresponds to our action, to our body. The spirit, the ruach, the life essence, this should be the spirit, is the heart. As we said, the emotions, the human dimension of the spiritual. And that is the speech, which is also a human function, but yet more abstract, a higher dimension of expression. And the neshama, the divine soul, is housed in the brain. That is our thought. Those are the mind. And we'll talk about how the Jewish approach to life is not to deny the emotions, but that the emotions have to be directed by our greater mission and purpose and thoughts. The two other levels, which we're going to mention briefly, the Chaya is corresponding the living essence to the inner light, the perception, we said, of godliness in the world, of godliness in everything around us, including ourselves. And the Yechid, the unique essence, is the presence of the Almighty, which is a level that, as I said, is more the spiritual subconscious. So the Torah presents us with different tools of how to embark on that spiritual soul journey. And we're going to actually show how we climb the ladder of the Sfirot. In our previous talk, we talked about the 10 divine qualities that emanate from the divine. And we'll show how each of those is a level for us to aspire to climb, to grow towards. So the lowest level, the Nefesh, corresponds to Malchut, kingship, the lowest of the Sfirot. Why? Because we said that the bottom level is really a vessel that is a receptacle for all of the other energies. That is the physical body. The physical body, though, also has the lower drives, the ego and pride particularly, where we identify our self-value in our ego, in how other people honor us, in how other people perceive us, and not for our true value in who we are ourselves. The next level, the lowest level of the Ruach, is the sexual drive, which is more spiritual, and if used in the proper way, can have a deep spiritual connection, but that requires direction and self-control. And so that is the mitzvah not to lust or desire after the physical things in our lives. That's control over our physical drives, food and sex being two of the most difficult. The next level is Hod, which literally means gratitude. That's the level of thanking God. And Yehudi comes from the root Hod, which is to give thanks. To be a Jew is to recognize, to have gratitude. And if we don't have gratitude, we don't have an essential essence of our spiritual being. And that is channeled through blessings and prayer. That's what Jewish prayers are about. That's why we say blessings before we eat food, to show gratitude for even the most basic things in our life. The next level, Netzach, victory, it is the quality of persistence. It's working hard to change, overcoming laziness. And we know that to achieve meaningful goals, it requires hard work and it requires consistency over time. The good things in life are not acquired immediately. No quick fixes. So that quality is vital to spiritual growth. Netzach is also emunah. It's also trust and belief in the Almighty. Tiferet is the next one. Beauty, balance. And that is achieved. That corresponds to the forefather Jacob, who was embodied Torah study. The work-life balance is that often we have to spend many hours of our life working, but we also need to take care of our spiritual selves. So Torah study provides us with a regular diet of spiritual teachings. And it can be through Torah. There are other wisdom paths that one can seek to improve one's life, deepen one's connection with our higher self and with the Almighty. That's Tiferet. Gvura, strength, self-discipline, is control, particularly over our speech, not speaking lashon hara, not gossiping about others. And that requires us to see the good in others and not be critical, to hold ourselves back from those instinctive reactions. When we don't have a good sense of self-worth, what do? We put others down. And so having spiritual self-worth, connecting with our higher soul, with our ruach, will get us to the point of having that real intrinsic self-worth and being able to stop those destructive behaviors. Along with that comes judging other people favorably. They do something, give them the benefit of the doubt. And finally, the highest level of ruach is chesed, loving kindness, giving to others, charity and good deeds. And one of my teachers said that when it all comes down to it, if you look at Judaism, the bottom line question is, after everything is said and done, are you a giver or are you a taker? And so we talked about God's quality, main quality in interacting the world is chesed, is giving. We try to emulate the Almighty and to be a giver. And finally, the level of neshama is, now these are, once again, the higher levels of the sfirot are the spiritual subconscious. So the neshama, we said, in a sense, is even out of our body, but bina means understanding. So the neshama is understanding what our path is in life, what our purpose and mission is, what within us we need to fix and overcome and work on. And that would be overcoming worries, and sadness. And that is working on the subconscious, working on the deeper level of our will and our purpose. So the Chaya and the Yechida, the top two levels would be Chachma and Keter. We've already talked about those. So there we have that the Torah's mitzvot are really, and this is from Ephraim Pavlanov, highly recommend his videos on YouTube, his website. And so he presents us with a path that through the mitzvot, through the tools of the Torah, we are given a path towards spiritual growth, towards actualizing our true inner self. And as we see, it doesn't mean denying, rejecting the ruach and the nefesh, the spirit and the body. The goal is to channel those parts of ourselves so they are directed upwards and working towards the fulfillment of our divine soul purpose. That is really the ultimate soul path that we strive for. And so there we have all the levels, and may we all merit to connect. This is the time of year of connection before the high holidays, the month of Elul, where we reconnect with our soul as a path to reconnect to the Almighty. And really, when we talk about our relationship to God, we can think about God's connection to the world, God's impact on the world. We talked about that in our last talk. But really, the most direct connection to the divine is through the divine within us, through our neshama, through our divine soul, which receives the light from above, which can perceive it. And so the challenge is, we said, to open up those channels to our deepest inner self through all the tools we've talked about. The preparatory ones of clearing out the negative things in our life, the discipline to be able to channel the different parts of our lower selves, and cultivating our higher self. And with that, we will find true actualization and happiness and wholeness.